For years, many in the precious metals community have suspected that something wasn't right with silver prices. Today, I'm going to walk you through the shocking evidence that has finally come to light, proving what many have long suspected. The silver market has been systematically manipulated. Let me start with what happened just last week. A series of internal documents from major bullion banks were leaked, showing coordinated efforts to suppress silver prices through strategic trading on the COMEX. These documents reveal explicit communications between traders at UBS, Deutsche Bank, and several other institutions, discussing how to time large paper silver sales to maximize price impact during low liquidity trading hours. This isn't speculation anymore. We now have the smoking gun. The manipulation techniques exposed in these documents are sophisticated and deliberate. Traders would coordinate massive sell orders during the thinnest market periods, particularly during the Asian trading session, when volume is naturally lower. The goal? To trigger stop-loss orders and create cascading selling pressure that would drive prices artificially lower. One particularly damning email from a senior trader at Deutsche Bank stated, "We need to increase our short positions before the London fix. Target $2 lower by end of week." This was followed by a series of trades that matched exactly what was described. Over 500 million ounces of paper silver sold in a 30-minute window, despite no fundamental change in the physical market. What's most shocking is the scale. The documents reveal that on certain days, paper contracts representing more than 500 million ounces of silver would change hands. That's over 60% of annual global mine production traded in a single day. Does that sound like natural market activity to you? Let's put this in historical context. Since 2008, silver has experienced unusual price behavior that defies fundamental supply and demand dynamics. While industrial demand has steadily increased with silver's growing use in electronics, solar panels, and medical applications, the price has remained suspiciously range-bound. In fact, if you look at the silver-to-gold ratio historically, it averaged around 15-1 for centuries. Today, it's hovering around 80-1. This extreme divergence from historical norms simply cannot be explained by natural market forces. The manipulation mechanics are fascinating when you understand how they work. The key lies in the futures market, where paper contracts for silver are traded. These contracts represent a promise to deliver physical silver at a future date. But here's the critical point. Less than 1% of these contracts ever result in physical delivery. This creates a disconnect between the paper price and the physical reality. The banks can sell unlimited paper silver without needing to own the actual metal. It's like writing checks from an empty bank account, but never having to cash them. The newly leaked documents show that certain banks maintain short positions that exceeded the global available physical supply by a factor of 3. This would be impossible in a truly free market with proper regulatory oversight. What's particularly interesting is the timing of these manipulative activities. The documents reveal a pattern of concentrated selling during key economic announcements, FOMC meetings, and just before major technical breakout levels could be reached. This isn't random. It's strategic price suppression. One trader's message explicitly stated, "Need to cap silver before it breaks $30. Increasing shorts now." Within hours, silver mysteriously plunged $3, despite no fundamental news. But why would banks want to suppress silver prices? The answer lies in their massive positions in other markets. Many of these institutions hold significant long positions in the US dollar and treasury bonds. Silver, as a monetary metal and inflation hedge, tends to rise when confidence in fiat currencies falls. By keeping silver prices artificially low, these banks protect their larger positions. There's also compelling evidence that central banks have been complicit in this manipulation. The Bank for International Settlements, BIS, often called the Central Bank of Central Banks, has been documented intervening in the gold and silver markets through swap arrangements with commercial banks. These swaps provide the ammunition for price suppression operations. The physical evidence of manipulation is becoming impossible to ignore. The premium for physical silver over the paper spot price has reached historic highs in recent months. In some markets, physical silver commands a 30 to 40% premium over the COMEX price. This disconnect between paper and physical markets is a glaring sign that the paper price does not reflect true supply and demand. Industry insiders have been sounding the alarm. Keith Neumeyer, CEO of First Majestic Silver, one of the world's largest primary silver producers, has repeatedly stated that the true cost of production for silver is well above current market prices. He's even refused to sell his company's silver at spot prices, recognizing the artificial suppression. The CFTC, which is supposed to regulate these markets, has been suspiciously inactive despite mounting evidence. In 2013, they closed a 5-year investigation into silver manipulation without taking action, despite having received thousands of complaints and substantial evidence. We now know from whistleblowers that there was significant political pressure to bury the investigation. And that brings me to a quick aside. If you're sitting on $100,000 or more in retirement accounts, I've put together a free guide on how gold and silver IRAs work. It's in the description below. The guide covers how to get physical precious metals into your retirement account without tax penalties. With everything we're discussing today, it might be worth checking out if that's relevant to your situation. Now, back to the manipulation evidence. The most damning proof comes from the banks themselves. In 2016, Deutsche Bank settled a lawsuit alleging precious metals manipulation and turned over 350,000 pages of documents and 70 audio recordings that implicated other banks. These materials revealed a coordinated effort to rig the silver market through a practice known as spoofing, placing and quickly canceling large orders to create false impressions of market direction. What's new in the recent leak is the scale and explicit nature of the coordination. We now have evidence of regular conference calls between traders at different institutions, specifically discussing how to cap silver prices at key technical levels. The leaked documents also reveal something truly shocking. Certain banks were running proprietary trading algorithms specifically designed to identify and trigger stop-loss orders in the silver market. These algorithms would detect concentration points of stop orders and then initiate selling to trigger those stops, creating artificial selling cascades. One trader described it as shooting fish in a barrel. They could see where the stops were placed and deliberately target those levels. The physical silver market tells a completely different story than the paper price suggests. Mints around the world have been unable to keep up with demand for physical silver coins and bars. The U.S. Mint has repeatedly sold out of Silver Eagles and has been forced to ration sales to authorized purchasers. The Perth Mint in Australia and the Royal Canadian Mint have faced similar challenges. This physical shortage contrasts sharply with the paper price action. In a true free market, such shortages would drive prices substantially higher. The fact that they haven't is perhaps the strongest evidence of manipulation. The COMEX itself has been changing its rules to avoid delivery defaults. In 2020, they introduced a new mechanism allowing contracts to be settled with cash instead of physical metal. This rule change came precisely when physical delivery demands were surging, suggesting the exchange was struggling to meet its obligations. Industry experts estimate that there are more than 500 paper claims for each ounce of deliverable silver in the COMEX system. This leverage creates an inherently unstable situation that could implode if even a small percentage of contract holders demanded physical delivery. The recent leak also exposed communications regarding the February 2021 silver squeeze that resulted from the Wall Street Bets movement. Internal messages show panic among traders as retail buyers began demanding physical delivery, with one stating, "If this continues for another week, we're looking at force majeure conditions." This admission reveals how close the system came to breaking. What's particularly interesting is how the manipulation has evolved over time. In the early years, it was relatively crude, simply dumping large volumes of contracts in thin markets. But as scrutiny increased, the methods became more sophisticated, involving complex options strategies, cross-market arbitrage, and high-frequency trading algorithms specifically designed to cap price rises while allowing controlled declines. The economic implications of this manipulation are profound. Silver is not just a precious metal, but an essential industrial component. By artificially suppressing its price, the true supply-demand dynamics have been distorted, leading to underinvestment in mining and exploration. This sets the stage for a potential supply crisis as industrial demand continues to grow, particularly in green energy technologies. Solar panel production alone is expected to consume over 150 million ounces of silver annually by 2025, representing nearly 15% of global mine supply. Add in growing demand from electric vehicles, 5G infrastructure, and medical applications, and you have a recipe for a supply crunch of historic proportions. The geopolitical dimension adds another layer to this story. Countries like China and Russia have been steadily increasing their physical silver holdings while reducing their exposure to dollar-denominated assets. They understand the strategic importance of precious metals in the coming monetary reset. The BRICS nations have explicitly discussed backing their new reserve currency with a basket of commodities, including silver. This represents a direct threat to dollar hegemony and explains why Western financial institutions have been so determined to suppress precious metals prices. They're protecting the current monetary paradigm. What happens when manipulation fails? History provides some clues. In 1980, the Hunt brothers attempted to corner the silver market, driving prices from $6 to $50 in a matter of months. When the COMEX changed its rules to stop them, the price collapsed. But that was private actors being stopped by the system. What we're seeing now is manipulation by the system itself, which is much more significant and far-reaching. The more relevant historical parallel might be the London gold pool of the 1960s. This was an explicit agreement between central banks to suppress the gold price to maintain the $35-ounce peg under the Bretton Woods system. Despite the combined resources of multiple central banks, this manipulation ultimately failed in 1968, when physical demand overwhelmed their ability to supply metal. Gold was revalued significantly higher as a result. We appear to be approaching a similar inflection point in silver. The divergence between paper prices and physical reality has stretched to the breaking point. Something has to give. The recent leak suggests that even the manipulators recognize their control is slipping. One message between traders stated, "The physical market is getting away from us. Too many players standing for delivery." Another noted, "Asian buyers don't care about our paper games anymore. They want the metal." This brings us to the critical question: what happens next? Based on the evidence, we appear to be in the final stages of this manipulation scheme. The physical market is asserting itself, and the paper pricing mechanism is losing credibility. When manipulation ends, prices don't just return to fair value. They typically overshoot dramatically to the upside. Given the extreme nature and duration of silver price suppression, the potential upside move could be unprecedented. Industry analysts who have studied supply-demand fundamentals suggest a fair value for silver between $50 and $100 per ounce in today's dollars, without considering monetary demand. If silver reasserts its monetary role in a world of currency instability, those targets could prove conservative. The banks themselves appear to be preparing for this eventuality. The leaked documents show that, while maintaining short positions in the paper market, certain institutions have been quietly accumulating physical metal through subsidiaries and offshore entities. They're talking their book in public, while preparing for the inevitable behind the scenes. J.P. Morgan, after acquiring Bear Stearns' short position in 2008, spent years manipulating prices lower, while simultaneously amassing the largest private silver hoard in history, estimated at over 800 million ounces. They've been fined nearly $1 billion for precious metals manipulation, but have made far more on their physical holdings. The writing is on the wall. The silver manipulation scheme is in its final stages, and the recent leaks have exposed the mechanics for all to see. The only question remaining is not if, but when the breaking point will come. For investors, the implications are clear. Physical silver, held outside the banking system, represents one of the most asymmetric opportunities in financial markets. When price discovery returns to this market, the move is likely to be swift and dramatic. The evidence presented in these leaked documents confirms what many have long suspected. The silver market has been subject to a coordinated manipulation scheme of unprecedented scale and duration. But like all such schemes throughout history, it will ultimately fail when physical reality reasserts itself. The smartest money is already positioning accordingly. Central banks, Eastern nations, and even the manipulators themselves are securing physical metal while they still can. The recent exposure of these manipulation tactics only accelerates the timeline to the inevitable resolution. The silver price manipulation is now exposed for all to see. The only question that remains is what you're going to do with this information before the music stops.